Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Today we're playing some Monoblack Reanimator. So, last week I recorded a video of what if there is no Entomb, what does Reanimate look like at that point? And I did mention in that video that there was another way you could take it, and this is that other way, so let's get right into it. So, this particular build, because it's Monoblack, it actually gets to leverage the Dark Rituals, so we can power out some turn 1 things. So we don't get to play Entomb, so what are we running instead? We are running Unmarked Grave. This is 2 mana, search your library for a non-legendary card, put that card into your graveyard, then shuffle. So this means we can't get Grizzlebrand and we can't get Atraxa, but we can still get Archon of Cruelty, and there's a few other monsters we have here as well. So Tyrranax Rex is a very difficult creature to deal with because it has Ward 4, Trample, Haste, and Toxic 4. So if we can put this into play on turn 1, we can kill our opponent pretty darn quickly. So that's what this is for. We have Serra's Emissary, so we can protect ourselves from like sorceries, so our opponent can't Tendrils of Agony us or whatever. So this is a useful tool to have access to. We have Ashen Rider. This can just come in and blow something up, and then if it dies, it blows something else up. And then the last one we have is Archetype of Endurance. So these are all like reanimation targets that have seen play in the past in previous Reanimator decks. So what you do with this Archetype of Endurance is you go and get your Serra's Emissary first, then you chuck in the Archetype of Endurance, and then they can't answer your Serra's Emissary, and that can protect you from whatever your opponent is trying to win the game with. And of course, Archon of Cruelty is just pretty much the best thing we can be doing, and that's going to be the one that we have a 4 of. It's also black, so it pitches to things like Unmask here. So, how are we getting these creatures into our graveyard aside from Unmarked Grave? Well, we can hit ourselves with a Cabal Therapy. We can Collective Brutality to bin a card. We can unmask ourselves, or we can Thoughtseize us. And the ways we're reanimating is Persist, which again says target non-legendary creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. So we can use this to go get back any of these, because we're not running any legendary cards. We also have Animate Dead, because it's just really solid, and Reanimate, of course. So if Entomb does get banned, there might be less things to worry about in terms of casting in Exhume. So this Persist could be an Exhume, and then you don't necessarily need to run all non-legendary creatures, because you can have some legendary creatures that you can bin off with these tools, rather than having to get everything with Unmarked Grave. So Unmarked Grave, in that situation, you know, it can get you some like one-offs, or it can get you the Archon of Cruelty. But then your other things can still enable the legendary creatures. But we're trying out Persist today. I don't necessarily think this is right. This could also be Shallow Grave, and we can have more legendary things, but Shallow Grave is pretty bad with a lot of these. It's only really good with the big legendary creatures. So I think this could be an Exhume if the format changes around. In our mana base, we have 2 Underground Mortuaries, and 2 Bayous, and 2 Swamps, and then Fetch Lands. Now you might be asking, why do we have green things? It's certainly not to cast this Archetype of Endurance, even though that can sometimes come up. What it actually is for is our sideboard plan. So what we do is we swap completely into a different deck here. So we have 3 Leyline in the Void for the combo decks that use a graveyard that can race us, like Oops or Spells, but then we're just going into Witherbloom Apprentice plus Chain of Smog combo. If you're unfamiliar with this combo, we target ourselves with Chain of Smog, and then we can copy it as many times as we want, stripping our hand, and then just keep going. Witherbloom Apprentice drains life for 1 whenever we copy or cast a spell. So we get instant or sorcery spell, that is. So this is just an infinite drain life. And we have Spoils of the Vault to help us find either of these pieces. This is a sideboard pivot that has been doing very well for a certain selection of players, so we're going to give it a whirl today. Do I think this is the best way to build Reanimator? No, but I think it's viable, and I want to see what the format looks like without an Entomb. And the reason I think Entomb is the most likely thing to get chopped is because Blue-Black Reanimator is by far the best deck in the format. It's got nearly twice as many challenge top 8s as the second best deck, and Entomb is the thing that lets that deck work because it's a unique effect. Obviously, Unmarked Grave isn't the same, so it's a unique effect that can go and find any sort of creature they need, and the big scary ones are the legendary creatures like Atraxa for the most part. And it allows them to run a really narrow package where they only have 2 big monsters instead of having to run like loads and loads of stuff to get into the graveyard. If you're interested in my other thoughts about Entomb, by all means check out either my Patreon, where I'm going to have an article about this up very soon if it's not already out, and also check out my Reanimator video from last week where I played a different build, which was like Careful Studies and Lootings. Anyway, rambling aside, this is the deck we're playing today. I hope you enjoy it. Please remember to like and subscribe, and let's see if we can get some Unmarked Grave goodness going in this league. If you want to play some Eternal Magic, why not check out the New York City first annual Eternal Team Trios Winter Tournament. This is a legacy, modern and vintage team event, and team events are always some of the best Magic events going, so why not check it out if you're in the area. So our opener is a bit of a weird one here. We can Collective Brutality and bin off this Archon of Cruelty on turn 1 if we want to. We have a lot of reanimation spells, but not that many ways of getting things into the bin. This Collective Brutality, it's an additional cost, so this will always succeed in getting our creature in the bin. We will need to find another land if we're doing this, though. I think we're going to keep. Just needing to draw a land is not a terrible place for us to be. We can also draw another Lotus Petal or a Dark Ritual. If we look at our list, that's, what, 24 cards minus the 2 we have, so 22 cards. So we just get a basic Swamp, keep ourselves away from Wastelands, jam down this Lotus Petal, cast this, we're going to duress them, and then we're also going to drain their life, because this allows us to ditch the additional card here. What we don't want to see is 2 Reanimates in our opponent's hand. Okay. Goblin Engineer, this is probably going to be Painter, so we're going to take this Lightning Bolt. That's the only thing we can take, not that we particularly care about it. We just need to find a land, and then we're up and running. The Goblin Engineer can go and find Graveyard Hates. They probably play the Lava Spur Boots. Actually, no, they probably play the Goblin Engineer pitching the Spirit Guide on turn 1 and go and get a piece of Graveyard Hate. And then next turn, they can play the Lava Spur Boots and then turn it into that piece of Graveyard Hate. So we now only have a 1-turn window. Okay, they're going for the Lava Spur Boots. That is better for us unless they draw the Ancient Tomb, I guess. I guess they can play this. Actually, they can play this, which gives this guy haste. And then they can do it. Okay, let's just draw land and be fine. Come on, deck. I believe in you. We did not draw a land, and we're probably going to lose the game because of it. Maybe we're supposed to wait or mulligan. I'm not sure, but I felt this was a reasonable shot. Better than 1 in 3 chance. So they should just be able to put... Because they can use this and then use the Spirit Guide to activate this. So they can remove our Archon of Cruelty, and we're going to have to find another way into this game. There's an Ancient Tomb. So they can do this without using the Arena of Glory. They're just playing a Phyrexian Dragon Engine. Okay. Do they not have a piece of reanimation? A piece of Graveyard Hate to stop our reanimation? Interesting. So this is obviously an attempt to make it harder for us to cast actual Reanimate. But I think they probably could have just floated some Graveyard Hate in play. Can we draw a land this time? We cannot draw a land this time. Okay. Getting a little bit annoying. Next turn, we are odds on for having it. There is the Arena of Glory. In comes the Dragon Engine. Surely we see the Engineer this turn. Can't believe they didn't do this last turn, though. So this should be like Soulguide Lantern. If they don't have a Soulguide Lantern, then that makes it understandable, but why wouldn't you have Soulguide Lantern at the moment? It's such a useful card when so much of the format is graveyard-based. Painter's Servant. Okay, they just want to try and win the game. Intriguing. Can we draw what we're looking for? Come on, land. No land. No land, no Dark Ritual, nothing. We played the numbers on this one and it has backfired. Right, we'll take a lot of damage here. So we got 1 turn to do the thing. A Goblin Welder. They can give that haste if they want to. They don't seem to want to. Can we draw a land this time? We cannot draw a land. Wowzers, trousers. Okay, so our opponent's probably going to board out their red removal and board in things like Leyline and stuff. So we're going to go for the full Duke here. So this is 15 cards in. What comes out is the question. So Unmarked Grave and Reanimation spells can bring back the Witherbloom Apprentice, which is an important thing to note here. So we probably want to take out most of this. Like what if we're taking out all of the monsters? I don't think we're supposed to take all of the monsters out there, but maybe. So we get rid of all the monsters and the Persists and the Animate Deads. That's 15. That still leaves us with this selection of reanimation stuff. So we could split the difference a bit. If we're keeping the Unmarked Graves in, these can obviously find stuff. So maybe we take out this Animate Dead and we give ourselves something to find. Probably an Archon of Cruelty is just the best thing we have, although Serra's Emissary naming Artifact is going to be pretty good because we can't be targeted by anything. How are they going to ever get rid of this? I guess they just Painter and then Red Blast it. That's pretty good. So maybe we don't do that one. Do we want the Archon of Cruelty or do we want the Ashen Rider? Just so we have the targeted removal of an annoying permanent. I think that's going to be better here. Do we want less of this or not? Like, we definitely want black creatures if we're having any creatures in here. So we could, like, cut a couple more here and just run a couple of Archon of Cruelty. So we've kind of got this plan if we want it, but these are all just black cards that pitch to our Unmask anyway. I think that's what we're going to do. I am not a Reanimator expert by any stretch of the imagination. What a weird hand. I don't think I can keep this one. Just, there's no mana underneath us. So we Thoughtseize and have nothing going on. I think we have to mulligan. Witherbloom. We only need one Witherbloom, really. We get rid of an Unmask here. This doesn't feel great, if I'm being honest with you right now. So, what do we want to get rid of? Is it the other Unmask? I think it's the other Unmask, because this still opens up the graveyard line at some point. Abrade, Painted Servant, Goblin Welder. Yikes. Kind of annoying. I guess we take the... Do we take the Abrade here? I think we take the Abrade. So the reason we take the Abrade is so that our Witherbloom Apprentice can live when we're going for that sort of combo. Interesting our opponent's got the Abrade in though. So Great Furnace and a Goblin Welder. Not a shocker there. A Reanimate. Okay, we're pretty close to doing one of the things that our deck can do. If this was Entomb, obviously, we could just Entomb, Reanimate, and we'd be away. The one that tutors being 2 mana, rather than like the other way around, so we could have tutor into the graveyard for 1 and then Reanimate for 2, would be a much better curve. Alright, there is another Goblin Welder. We're going to get Bash for 1. Get those Goblin Beats in. We are. If we draw a land, we can do some Unmarked Grave stuff. Okay. Let's Unmarked Grave and put an Archon of Cruelty into the graveyard here. I think that is just the best option here. Can we dodge Graveyard Hate for 1 turn cycle and then just Reanimate it? This will get some Graveyard Hate soon. Our opponent has 2 mystery cards. It's going to be the Painter. Yes, this can also just get the Grindstone and win the game for them. I've chosen blue. That doesn't fill me with a great amount of joy that our spells are going to resolve. Now, 2 mystery cards. I suspect one of them is a Red Blast, which I don't think we can beat unless we draw a Thoughtseize or something this turn. Ah, look at that. A Thoughtseize. Let's check the coast is clear. A Fury. Okay. I guess we take the Fury. Do we take the Fury to take the Spirit Guide? They're not casting the Fury, are they? They can cast the Fury next turn. This is a little bit awkward for us. What does the Fury actually do? They cast it. It's a big guy. We kind of have to respect a bit. I think we just take the Fury. And then we probably Reanimate the Fury, I think, is the correct play here. The only issue with Reanimating the Fury is we can't kill everything here. If we Reanimate... So if we Reanimate the Fury, we can kill the Painter and a Welder, but then they can just Welder it back. So it doesn't do anything. We can kill both Welders, but then they still got a Painter, and we need to find a way to bring back the Archon. I think the plan here is to bring back the Archon, and then hopefully be able to draw into something that allows us to bring back their Fury. I got rid of the Painter because they can obviously bring that back whenever they need to. A Polluted Delta. Okay. This can get us an Underground Mortuary to try and dig us towards what we need. So another Reanimate on the Fury is pretty good here. We're going to chunk away one of their guys, but they can just make tokens to absorb it, and then they can just Grindstone kill us on the following turn. Maybe we were supposed to get the Ashen Rider. Maybe that was the better shout there with that Unmarked Grave. Playing a Fable of the Mirror Breaker. So they have so much stuff to sacrifice here. We need the Fury. Although the problem is right now is that our opponent gets to put the Painter into play. I think we're just going to lose this one, to be honest. Let's go and get this Mortuary. Guess we can mill over the Ashen Rider now. And Unmask, that's not going to do it, is it? Go into the graveyard. We do get to draw another card with this, so we are live for the combo if we can draw the exact right card right now. So if we draw Chain of Smog, we do win now. Come on, deck. We did not draw what we required there. Our opponent should be able to string this one together. They get the Grindstone, they have 3 mana, they turn the Grindstone into a Painted Servant after they've activated targeting us. Is there anything in our deck that gets shuffled in? No, so that's not really an out for us either. I think we're just dead here. In theory, this should be like a pretty reasonable matchup for us because they don't really interact with us on turn 1 and 2. So we tend to be able to do our thing. We're just a little bit behind the curve here. We respected the potential for Leyline. Maybe the fact that we're not going for it now might give us our opponent some pause. Like we're not just scooping it, we're making them play it out. But we've got plenty of time on our clock. These aren't going to be the longest rounds you've ever seen. There's the Grindstone. They can loot some cards away if they want. And then all they do here is activate the Grindstone, target us, and then holding priority, they turn it into a Painter. Yeah, it looks like they're going for it. All right, we didn't get to bluff our way through this one. All right, that match didn't go so well for us. Game 1 was very unfortunate. We had a bunch of turns to just draw mana. Maybe we should have mulliganed that hand, but just a single piece of mana would have been good. I was hoping that the ability to punch a hole in their hand would have been really good, but their deck just didn't have anything that we could take that was actually relevant, which was kind of awkward. Let's go to round 2. Now this hand does not make a big monster, so we're going to mulligan it. This hand also doesn't make a big monster. Let's mulligan it. This hand makes a turn 1 Tyrranax Rex. I guess we keep that. So we want land, unmask, target ourselves, put this in the graveyard, reanimate. This is basically going to be a force of will check hand, unless we want to Thoughtseize on turn 1. Now, and then hopefully draw a black card, which is quite likely. The problem with doing that is that exposes us to a daze on our opponent's turn potentially, or a wasteland. So I think the play here is just to target ourselves and just get this Tyrranax Rex in play. Do you have a force of will? They do not. Okay. This game is looking good. Are they just going to wombo combo us on turn 1? Or is the spooky dinosaur going to go all the way? I do enjoy dinosaurs quite a lot as a general thing that existed. So always happy that I can attack my opponent with a dinosaur. Bad lands. Alright, our opponent might be doing similar but more broken stuff than us. Bad lands tends to be either a Reanimate deck or a Storm deck. The Faith is doing suggest Reanimate here. Archon of Cruelty can kill our Tyrranax Rex, which is not really where I want to be. But we can potentially shut off Reanimate if we get one more crack in, so they will have to have a 2-mana reanimation spell, which should be relatively easy to do with the fact that they're digging into their deck with a looting. A Grizzlebrand, okay. We're going to see a Shallow Grave here. We should have Thoughtseized our opponent and reanimated one of their creatures. That would have been better if we unmasked them. An Animate Dead. Okay. Drawing 7 cards is probably still pretty good here, because they can block here and gain 6. I think we probably do have to keep attacking. But we could kill this and then reanimate it. That is a possibility if we draw a reanimate next turn. Our opponent's deck is just going to be better than ours because they're not trying to play what if something was banned. They're playing just the best cards that are around right now. So this is always going to be a tricky one. I was hoping to avoid playing like the mirror but where they have better cards. This is a lot more like the build that we played last week. Right, so they're probably going to discard some big monsters. If they discard an Archon of Cruelty, they didn't discard an Archon of Cruelty. Animate Dead. If we let this hit us, they're going to draw a bunch more cards and probably Archon of Cruelty us. They're almost certainly able to go again next turn. If we kill this, they're just going to be able to reanimate it. I don't know what to do. If they hit us for 6, then we hit them back for 4 toxic. And then they hit us for 6 and we hit them for 4 toxic and win. Is that our best line? I think it is. I think we're just dead if they put another monster into play anyway. So I think we're just going to pass here. As annoying as that is. So the draw of playing the legendary creatures is pretty strong. Obviously we don't get to do that in our build. Now we could change up the build in a way that does. Which is something we explored last week, like I said. I believe our opponent should be able to win here. They can always attack us for 6 and then draw another 7 anyway, but that seems a bit sketchy. Unmask. Right, we'll lose our Animate Dead here. Dark Ritual. And Entomb. Which we don't have access to because of the experiment we're running. Exhume. So we're going to lose our guy. I think we can call it a day there. Yeah, I think we'll call it a day. And then go to the sideboard. Alright. So our opponent's just running a better deck than us. Not ideal. We would like to have some Leylines, please. We can have all of this stuff. Get rid of a whole bunch of this. We can reanimate our opponent's creatures if that becomes a thing that we need to do. Persist, get out of here. You're the worst reanimation spell in our deck. The Unmarked Graves don't look great here either. And that's already gotten us down to below the amount of cards that we would like. I think we'll have an Unmarked Grave still. And we'll have... which of these creatures is better? So Serra's Emissary, if we name creature, Archon of Cruelty does have to target. So this can just protect us from Archon of Cruelty, and it can also block the Archon of Cruelty quite nicely. That is probably worth doing. If our opponent reanimates it, it's not the end of the world for us. So I think we're probably cutting some Animate Deads here. We'll get another Unmarked Grave in there. Just so it's just like a thing we can do. This isn't black, so it doesn't pitch, which is a problem, but we can always discard it from our own hand. We're mainly trying to win with the Witherbloom Apprentice combo. We don't want to give our opponent the ability to just, okay, you've brought in Leyline, they're just going to discard a card from our hand and then get back whatever we've got in our hand. So I think the Witherbloom is better for us. If we were on the play, our opponent's probably going to have access to something along the lines of a Leyline, I would suspect. Okay, I don't hate this. We'll keep this one. We do need to find a key piece here in the Chain of Smog, but we effectively have 8 copies because we're running Spores of the Vault. And if we find the Spores of the Vault, we can use it on turn 2 off of this and then have the lands to cast the Chain of Smog and just win. There is an interesting option available to us where we play the turn 1 Witherbloom so it can't be taken out of our hand by hand disruption. Because that is one of the things I am worried about here. Right, I think I'm going to get... I don't think our mana base matters here, actually. I get the Bayou here. And we are just going to cast this now. Our opponent is more likely to interact with this in our hand than they are in play. This does potentially slow down our clock because we can't win on turn 2 now. But we have a Thoughtseize to fire off next turn. I don't believe our opponent's going to be able to beat this Leyline on turn 1. So we're just playing the way that gives us the highest upside. Alright, Dark Ritual. Thoughtseize targeting us. They're probably going to take our Thoughtseize, I would imagine. They could have a Collective Brutality of their own, which kills this, but they probably only have 2 of those in their entire deck, whereas they have 4 Thoughtseizes, 4 Unmasks, 4 Cabal Therapies. Alright, so there goes our Thoughtseize. Entomb, so this is just getting a bad card out of their deck. So they're probably going to put another Entomb. There we go. Not a great turn for our opponent there. Let's have a look. I do not want this. Go to attacks. Do I want this Collective Brutality right now? We can drain life a little bit. We can drain life for 3. We can have a look at our opponent's hand. I think we're going to hold for a turn. If we draw something bad, getting the duress and the life gain is quite handy. I think this is fine to do. So we get a little bit of damage off the Witherbloom. And we get to take a peek. They have a Reanimate. They drew a Chancellor. That is certainly a thing that we could be playing in our deck as well. I guess we take the one thing we can take here. Bash for 2. So the more we hit our opponent's life total, the better, because it means if they break out of this, they can't use Reanimate. We have our own Reanimate. Not very useful. Nothing from our opponent. Not a surprise. Another Witherbloom Apprentice. Don't mind if I do. Doubles our clock. Puts our opponent to 7. And we play the Witherbloom. So we got them on a 2-turn clock now. It won't take much to drain them out for the last few points as well, if that's the thing we need to do. They want to unmask us. They pitch an Archon of Cruelty, sure. They just want more information, I suppose. We could cast this, and it might cost us the game. Or we can win immediately. Do I want to try and win the game now? There are 4 copies of Chain of Smog in our deck. What do I think our opponent can do with 1 turn? Alright, we came to game. Let's cast Spores of the Vault. We are going up to 24 as well. Chain of Smog. Let's see how much life we take. Virtually none. Okay, cool. So then we just win the game here, and our opponent's conceded. Alright, that strategy looked pretty solid. I don't want to just do the same again. I think that's pretty reasonable. We've got some reanimation spells for what our opponent's doing. I wonder if our opponent's got something like a sneak... sorry, not sneak attack. Show and tell that they can then put their big monsters in with. That is a possibility. This hand does not play. Let's mulligan this one. Where is my delicious Leyline? Our opponent is beginning with 7 cards in hand. I think I have to mulligan to Leyline here. Alright, we'll keep this. I want land. I want Leyline. Probably spoils. So we don't need Unmarked Grave. We can get rid of a Cabal Therapy here. Chancellor of the Annex. Faith is looting. Let's see what you chuck into the void. One of the Chancellors. They might have more Chancellors in hand, but we don't have to worry about them anymore. Feels like they're building up to a show and tell already. A Dalthy Voidwalker. Sure, that's fine. A Reanimate. Not the one I wanted. I think we're just going to... I think I'm just going to Underground Mortuary here. We have to be careful with the Spores of the Vault because we can put it into our opponent's void and then they might be able to get the thing that just wins them the game. Alright, what are you going to take here? probably the spoils. They're just going to attempt to beat us down. I'm a little bit reluctant to cast a Thoughtseize because it might take a turn off the clock. The difference between 18 and 16 is a turn. Sorry, the difference between 19 and 17 is a turn. We still have this Chancellor trigger to worry about, so we can just chuck something into that at some point. Unless we draw a land, then we can just pay for it and get a Thoughtseize off. Right, we took our spoils, that is not a surprise. Let's go and get ourselves a Surveil land. It's going to be the Serra's Emissary, isn't it? I can feel it. An Animate Dead. That is not what we want. A Collective Brutality. Is that where I want to be right now? Okay, I think I'm just going to fire off this Cabal Therapy and just take away the Chancery Annex trigger for later. So kind of like banking a mana. If we draw a land, we get to Collective Brutality our opponent here. We don't anymore because they're Thoughtseizing us. That is unfortunate for us. We do have another Collective Brutality which can kill this. It's not a creature we ever get to block though. I don't believe it's worth Thoughtseizing here. It's our glorious mull to 5 Leyline versus our opponent's 7-card hand. What a time to be alive. An Unmask. Is that where I want to be here? Our opponent has 1 card in hand. I don't think I care enough about it just yet. If we leave this in hand and we draw the... I guess it doesn't really matter what we draw. This isn't going to help us out. We need mana and we need our payoff cards here. I would settle for a Collective Brutality. I'll play out this Lotus Petal. Our opponent's got 2 cards. I think it's probably worth firing one of these off now. What are you working with? An Atraxa and a Reanimate. I guess we take the Atraxa in case they do have some sort of show and tell pivot. These mirrors are always pretty funky. Like, nobody gets to play real Magic, basically. A Swamp. Alright. What do we need? We need to draw Collective Brutality on our next turn. That's pretty much the only thing that works here. But Collective Brutality is probably the whole game if we do draw it. Is the top card of our library Collective Brutality? Let's find out. Okay, it was basically one of the bottom cards, and we're now at minus 39. Alright, that's one way to go out. Yeah, this matchup's always going to be difficult because they're basically playing the same deck as us, except they aren't playing as if there's anything banned. But, you know, it felt even. We're both doing very similar things, and it certainly felt like we could have won this matchup. Let's go to round number 3. This is a turn 1, whatever monster we want. I'll keep this. If we need to, we can Thoughtseize first if we think our opponent is a deck that's going to have some sort of permission. A Verdant Catacombs. What are we looking at here, opponent? A basic forest. Ignoble Hierarch. Okay, we're just going to put an Archon of Cruelty into play, I think. I guess we are a little bit concerned about an Endurance. Is the one thing that I'm worried about. Do I want to Thoughtseize and take this Endurance potentially from our opponent? I think I do. We may as well just tick the boxes because we only have 1 round of going. So let's have a look. I think all these sort of green Cradle Control style decks should be running 4 Endurance in the main. Collector Roof, Natural Order. I think Natural Order is a little bit spooky, but the Grist is also kind of spooky too. I think we take the Grist. So we would have been fine there. But we only have 1 shot at it, so we should try and be relatively careful with it. So this turn they probably play the Catacombs, play the Youth, attack for 1. Okay, another Hierarch. So they might play this and the Youth, or they might just attack for 2. Here comes the Oof. So they can Natural Order next turn. But is that even that good against us? Uncertain. I think we go and get the Bayou here. Actually, it doesn't matter. We don't have any green cards, do we? What am I doing? Let's get Swamp. So I think we want to do the 4 mana play here so that we can reanimate the cards that they lose. So let's start Ritual. Cast this Unmarked Grave. I think it is just the Archon of Cruelty. I don't think there's anything better here that we can get from our little toolbox. No, we just get the Archon of Cruelty. Let's bring it back with a Persist so that we have the Reanimate, because Persist only hits cards in our graveyard. So they're going to lose something here. Probably the Youth. Because they can keep the mana and then cast a Natural Order and get an Atraxa and reload. Yeah, as expected. And then we can attack with this. If they block and kill our Archon of Cruelty, we can then bring back an Archon of Cruelty. Take another bite out of crime. White of the Reliquary. They got a Cradle. No. Interesting. They didn't want to natural order for something there. Okay, I think we're going to attack first. And then probably put this... If we draw a black card, we can put this Archon of Cruelty into our graveyard and reanimate it. Oh no, they lost the... sorry, they lost the natural order, didn't they? Apologies. So this baps our opponent for a bunch. And then we will unmask, targeting ourselves. Bring back the Archon of Cruelty. They lose something else. Serra's Emissary. Just all the big monsters come into play. They are very dead on our next turn. I'm not sure what they can do with this white of the Reliquary that matters. Okay, so the Graveyard Hate we're worried about is Endurance. Our opponent's deck does not have a lot of removal. So it's probably not a bad time to pivot. So let's get rid of these things. If I just name creature with this, they can phase it out with lands. Okay. Let's take all these things out and then we'll work out where we're at. So that is 60 cards. I think we want to strip a couple of these Unmarked Graves out for Archon of Cruelties. Maybe actually have 3 Unmarked Grave and 3 Archon of Cruelty? Or do you want 1 Ashen Rider? Maybe 1 Ashen Rider because maybe we want to pivot and grab this. That seems reasonable enough. We can always reanimate our opponent's creatures as well. Yes, please. This is a turn 3 kill, and we have the ability to Thoughtseize and take out something our opponent has that we care about. Alright, this feels like we're cooking with gas here. They could have a Thoughtseize themselves on turn 1, though. We're hoping for Mana Dork. The Bayou suggests that they might be Thoughtseizing us, though. Or they just don't care because they know we're not going to interfere with their mana. Please play a Dork rather than a Thoughtseize. It's a Dork. We got there. Right, so we're going to turn this into, I think a basic swamp is where I'm at. And let's take a little peek at our opponent's hand and see if there's anything we have to worry about. Endurance is in there. Thoughtseize. I don't really want to get Thoughtseized. The Grist is also annoying in other ways. But I think the Thoughtseize just has to go. Our opponent probably plays Grist. And then we... Cabal Therapy? Or do we play the Witherbloom? We could play the Witherbloom first. Force the minus on the Grist. And then we still need another couple of turns to do stuff. Kind of want a Dark Ritual here. That's the best draw. So this is either the Grist or they're going to hold up Endurance. I think they're just going to play the Grist and start getting some stuff on board that can deal some damage. Yeah, there's the Grist. This is like locked and loaded to kill something we play. This also makes their natural order a lot better because they can get rid of chaff instead of actually having to get rid of a real card. What is our line here? I think we can get a Surveil land and then Cabal Therapy away their natural order. Right, so then we get the Underground Mortuary on our opponent's turn, and then we can play the Witherbloom Apprentice on turn 3 if we want to, and then maybe our opponent's going to spend some resources killing it rather than expanding their board, and then we just untap, play both and win. Thoughtseize is not what we want our opponent to have, so hopefully we can avoid that. Just making another little friend. They don't have enough damage from this for us to worry about for a while. Spoils of the Vault. I don't really want to play that right now. We could Spoils of the Vault into Dark Ritual. If we Spoils of the Vault into Dark Ritual and it doesn't kill us, then we win the game next turn. Do we need to do that? Or can we just... So let's have a think. So we have 50 cards. 4 of them are going to be Dark Rituals. That's what, 12-ish cards? So we're going to take 2 here, go to 14. If we roll slightly badly on this, we just die. I don't think we want to do that. Maybe I'm not cut out to play Reanimator. Certainly Spoils of the Vault. Maybe I'm too much of a coward. But maybe the next card on top of our library is a Dark Ritual. It just feels like we're in a really strong position. I don't really want to just throw it all away out of nowhere. Right, let's just get this one in play. I'm not going to Cabal Therapy my opponent. They can play an Endurance. They now kind of know that the jig is up. They're almost certainly going to lose an insect token to kill my Witherbloom Apprentice. Here we go. Goodbye, Witherbloom Apprentice. You were good bait. I need our opponent to not kill us this turn and not Thoughtseize us. This feels like a natural order. A Green Sun Zenith where X equals 2. That's just going to be White of the Reliquary, I think. Or it's going to be some monster I'm completely unaware of that ruins my day. I'm pretty sure it's just going to be like a white. There we go. That's fine. Just pass the turn, please. Scary Centipede hitting us for 2 damages. And a turn we'll get ourselves Underground Mortuary because why not? Spoils of the Vault. You really want to be in my hand, don't you? Black and green. Here comes the Witherbloom. They have 1 mystery card in hand. Tag ourselves. Do you have a Dismember? Snuff Out doesn't work here. They wouldn't have boarded in Snuff Out anyway. Alright, we got the match. We're on the board. We're getting there. Okay, let's go to round 4. Alright, our opener for round 4 does not have a way of reanimating a creature, so we can do better than this. This works. We keep this. So what do we want to do here? So if we have Dark Ritual on turn 1, so we Dark Ritual, we have to Thoughtseize ourselves. What do we keep here? We could just Dark Ritual, Thoughtseize ourselves, Reanimate. I think this is a keep, and I think we put back the Polluted Delta. I don't think we need that for now. If we draw any black card, then we get to also check our opponent's hand. A Flooded Strand. A Lotus Petal. Does that change anything? I think it does, right? So we can go and get a Swamp, Thoughtseize our opponent. Am I playing this Daze or not? Am I playing around Daze with this Lotus Petal? I think so. So we Thoughtseize our opponent, then we unmask ourselves, pitching the Dark Ritual, and then we reanimate our guy. So what they might do here is protect their hand using a Brainstorm. Okay, do I care about any of these things? Maybe Lightning Bolt can be annoying. Maybe Unholy Heat can actually kill our creature at some point. Okay, I think we take the Unholy Heat here. And then we unmask ourselves, pitching Dark Ritual. Bin off the Archon, reanimate the Archon, have a jolly good time with it. Our opponent's going to lose something here. They lost a Flooded Strand. Okay, Brazen Borrow is something we're trying to avoid. But we are technically drawing 2 cards a turn here. Polluted Delta. What have you got? Let's attack. Alright, we're getting the trigger, so our opponent doesn't have anything right now. Binned off a Delver of Secrets. Sure. I will hit our opponent with a Cabal Therapy. I will name Lightning Bolt, I think, since they didn't fire it off. Goodbye, Lightning Bolt. I don't want to take one of their cards now. I don't think so. Let me just pass. We have them dead on the next swing. If they have a Thundering Falls, they're going to find it now. They're not. Okay, so just getting rid of the last card from the Brainstorm. So they almost certainly hid the Force of Will. Alright, we got game 1. Generally speaking, Delver doesn't have great graveyard hate, so I don't think this is a matchup where we're pivoting to our other plan. Do we need any of these tools at all? I don't believe so. I think we just go in with the main deck again. What does this hand do? We can reanimate some stuff, but we have to unmask ourselves, and they're going to counter the unmask. I think we can do better than this. Okay, this is better, I think. We've been off one of the Cabal Therapies. So another Dark Ritual, or a land is good. Or a Lotus Petal. So we can unmask our opponent pitching Cabal Therapy. That is a Mistress Bauble. Are we going to see a Delver here? No. They're just having a look at the top card of our library. This tells us that our opponent doesn't have a fetch land, because you would probably do that first. Okay, I guess if you're casting a Ponder, then it doesn't mean the same, actually. They're probably just having a look to see if we've got a pivot plan. They can maybe get a little bit of information. Alright, what do we have? This is an Archon of Cruelty, right? We play out the Swamp. We unmask our opponent, pitching the Unmarked Grave. And then we Dark Ritual, Cabal Therapy ourselves, Persist. What do they have? They have a Force of Will. I will bin off this Force of Will. And then I will cast this Dark Ritual. Cabal Therapy, targeting ourselves. Archon of Cruelty. Let's persist it back into play. And we begin to do crimes. So they lost a Misty Rainforest. Carry on. Dragon's Rage Channeler. Sure. So they're going to get some Surveil action with this Mistress Bauble. We're trying to dodge a Delirium Unholy Heat here. They still have the Underground Sea in hand, which can cast a Brainstorm. So they're not cooked yet. All right, let's attack first, and then we can make a decision what we're doing with our Thoughtseizes. So they lose this Dragon's Race Channeler, but they just wanted it for the Surveil action. Right, here comes the Brainstorm. They binned off a Wasteland. If we draw a land, we can just double Thoughtseize here, but they're probably going to hide whatever's good on top, if they have anything good. Play this Bayou. Let's fire in a Thoughtseize here. We've got plenty of life to work with. Let's just make things difficult for our opponent. Force of Negation and a Daze. I guess we take the Force of Negation. We just don't want to get hit by a Brazen Borrower. They have Delirium, I suspect. Creature, Artifact, Land, Instant Sorcery. Petty Theft. Sure, that was the thing they kept on top. And now we're playing one of those weird games where we're just in the dregs. This gets us a Surveil land. We can Thoughtseize our own creature out of our hand. We are aware that our opponent has access to a Daze. Let's get this Mortuary. A little bit of Surveil action. I will put this on top of my library. I will Thoughtseize myself. We could have done this last turn, I suppose, but I didn't want to play into Surgical Extraction if I could avoid it. And then we'll play around Daze by passing. We are exposing ourselves to the Surgical Extraction if our opponent has them, but Graveyard Hate in the Delver decks tends to be a little bit on the slim side. Alright, we'll play this out so we can play around more soft permission. Can I have an Archon of Cruelty, please? We're in. Lotus Petal we don't care about. We'll leave that in hand for now. Let our opponent think about us having something. So they got rid of the Daze that we knew about. So they are just mystery cards only over there. This will kill on the next swing. They have to find a Brazen Borrower or a... Okay, Seek the Beast. I was going to say Brazen Borrower or a Unholy Heat. So they could have found land Unholy Heat here and that would have been good enough. Alright, we got the game. Yeah. Beating a really solid tempo deck. Seems alright. So we are 4 rounds in and we are 2-2, which is about what I normally go with Reanimator because I'm not a very good Reanimator player. Let's see how we do in the final round and see if we can put positive on the board. Alright, this hand doesn't have any mana, so let's send that right back. What does this hand do? Nothing. I would like to have a hand that does a little bit more than nothing, so we're going to send this one back as well. This hand doesn't really do anything either. Let's go to 4. What does this hand do? Yikes. Nothing? Alright, let's go to 3. Okay. I think the play here is Persist or Animate Dead better? I think Persist is better than Animate Dead. In this particular situation, we're only reanimating our own creature. If this was a 4, that'd be good. So we keep. We've been off a land. We have to keep this. We don't get to keep both of these. I guess we get rid of the Persist here. And then we have to get rid of the Dark Ritual. Wait, what? We have to get rid of another card? Okay. Oh yeah, we're on 3. I thought we were on 4. Alright, we're going to live and die by the sword here. We're going to Cabal Therapy ourselves turn 1 and leave us open to try and draw Reanimate. If our opponent is playing a Reanimator strategy and reanimates our guy and we lose, so be it. I think this is the best line we have to try and win the game. Alright, basic swamp. Cabal Therapy. Archon of Cruelty, please. Alright. Hands off the wheel, let's see what happens. We need to draw a Reanimate and resolve said Reanimate. But if we do, it's pretty good. Okay, Tropical Island, that's not a great thing for us to see. Sometimes you mulligan to 3 and have a bad time. Like, we had a pretty good 5-card hand when we mulliganed there. If we could have had 5 of those cards instead of 3, then we'd have turn 1'd. I will play out a land. Our opponent may have a wasteland, but most Tropical Island decks these days tend to be in the Nadu ballpark, and they do not have wastelands. They could be some sort of control deck with a wasteland. Why would I say that? As soon as I say that, they're going to immediately draw a wasteland. That's how this game works. I don't think I needed to play out that land. I think that was actually a bit sloppy. Urza's Bauble. Are we on, like, rug tempo? If so, fair play. I love that sort of stuff. Okay, so they get to see none of our cards. Underground Mortuary. Let's have a look. Alright, our opponent knows we have a reanimation spell on top of our library because that's the only thing we're going to keep in this situation. Until our opponent applies pressure, we maybe don't have to fire that Persist off. The downside, though, is the longer we leave it, the more permission our opponent can sculpt. or the more likely they are to get a Wasteland and hit us, so we can't even cast a spell. So, bit of a tough one. I think we just have to brute force our way through and just keep casting every reanimation spell we draw until one works. Here's a strategy. Because like I said, we can get cut off from this with a Wasteland. I suspect this is getting dazed this turn. Like, we're still like one spell away from being able to pretty much just win this game. Delver, you're going to flip? They are. Is that another daze? Okay, that's another problem we have to wade through. But I don't think we can just sit and wait while our opponent beats us down. We just have to send things, hope they don't have them. Obviously now we know they have this, then we have to approach things differently. Alright, I will Thoughtseize now. I don't particularly like losing 2 life here. But I haven't really liked anything that's been happening in this game. Okay, I don't like what I'm seeing here. We're going to get hit by a big Murktide very soon. Brazen Borrower and Daze are both a pain. Reanimate's just shut off at this point. Yuck, this is all very disgusting work. I guess we take the Borrower, so at least our guy can sit and play and gobble these things up. But we have to get through this Daze. We take 6, so Reanimate is shut off. I don't believe we have any way of winning this game. But, you know, we had a combo attempt. What more can you say on a multi-3? We made our opponent have to have a counterspell. Okay. Before we played against Delver, we just went right in again, and I think that's what we're going to do this time around. I think our strategy is reasonable against Delver. What does our hand do here? So we can... We don't have any way of putting a monster in the graveyard, so I think this is a mulligan. We can't put a monster in the graveyard. I think we have to mulligan to 5. Not like this deck. We can make an Archetype of Endurance on turn 1. Is that good? It's alright. I guess we keep. So how are we going to do this? I kind of want to just play out the Collective Brutality on 2. Is that weird? Because that just guarantees our creature in the graveyard, which is kind of what we want. So we have the all-in strategy. Our opponent's gone to 5. We have the all-in strategy of unmask ourselves, put this in the graveyard. 2 of these cards have got to go, which does make things awkward. I think we put away the unmask and... Is it the Reanimate or is it the Persist? Losing 6 life is kind of a big deal in this matchup. I think I'm going to keep the Persist. It means we only have a 5/4. Which might not be good enough, you know. The disparity in the quality of our creatures is showing a little bit compared to the legendary-based Reanimator decks. I did feel like the deck we played last week is probably better than this one, but I've never really got on with the Monoblack Reanimator that much anyway. I've always preferred having the ability to loot through stuff. Right, let's play this one out. We want to see them play a little creature so we can snap their creature away with the Collective Brutality and duress them. That's kind of what we're working with here. Graph Digger's Cage, you say? How do we beat Graph Digger's Cage? So this is most likely a one-of in our opponent's deck. What is our solution to the Graph Digger's Cage problem? Good question. Are we on trying to hardcast our Archetype of Endurance? So we should have just gone for the full-on hard mode, I think. We should have just unmasked ourselves. I don't know if we can win this one now. But we do get to play a game 3. Do we? Is this game 3? I can't even remember now. No, wait, we lost game 1, didn't we? Oh dear. Yeah, not a big fan of getting wastelanded there. An Archon of Cruelty. All we need now is all the dark rituals you've ever seen in your life. We have a decision to make whether this gets a swamp, so we have a permanent mana source, or do we go and get a Surveil land and try and work our way towards doing something. Both have their advantages and disadvantages. Considering we're not under any pressure, I'm just going to hold. Another Unmarked Grave, not the one we want. It feels like a lot of the games we're losing aren't necessarily because we're running like Unmarked Graves type stuff. It's like our opponent having like good hate or good permission for what we're doing, or us mulliganing to oblivion. If our opponent starts to formulate some pressure, then we're going to need to crack this. At present, I think we can just hold. Okay, that is something worth cracking this for. Are you playing Stifle opponent? No. Okay. For a moment there. I was worried. Let's Thoughtseize. Force of Negation, Force of Will, Unholy Heat, Ponder. I'm not loving this. I'm going to hit the Ponder. If we're drawing off the top, you have to as well, opponent. We can get through these counter spells at some point. It's basically just one counter spell for now. Right, they drew a creature. Not what I wanted to see there. Tyrranax Rex. Okay. In comes their 1/1. And another 1/1, sure. Not bad draws there. A Polluted Delta. Do I fire off an Unmarked Grave, hoping that it baits our opponent into countering it? I think so. Losing game 1 is a real burden for us, so... Okay, they just let it happen. Interesting. What are we taking out? Probably just another Unmarked Grave at this point. I would like to use this Collective Brutality to kill a creature and gain some life. So I kind of need to poke a hole in our opponent's counter wall first. And then eventually we can draw enough mana to hardcast a big monster. But our opponent is obviously not going to give us the most amount of time doing that. If they can put an instant into the graveyard off of either of these, then we're getting bashed for loads and we don't even get to Collective Brutality their guys anymore. A Lightning Bolt. Okay, so I think we're just dead here. They're going to have Delirium and then bash us for 6 and then 6 again. I think we're done with that one. That was unfortunate. Losing game 1 was pretty awkward. If we'd have had like a bigger monster, maybe we're okay then. So we finished 2-3, which is not a great record, but even when I play the highest power Reanimate decks, I tend not to do that well. I don't get on with the archetype that brilliantly. So let's talk about the list. So, obviously, this selection of creatures is not the best. It felt like we were going through some hoops to make some like pretty decent stuff, but the hoops we were going through were a bit much for the payoff. Like sometimes it was good, and quite a few of our losses were not because of doing Unmarked Grave stuff. It was because we just couldn't string together like the A plus B. And the ratio of cards we're running here is exactly the same as the good decks at the moment, right? The good Monoblack Reanimator decks. So all I've done is I swapped out Entombs and Goryo's Vengeance for Persist and Unmarked Grave, and then I changed up the creatures. So all the ratios of all the spells to putting stuff in the yard is exactly the same. And it didn't really work out for us, like in terms of these ratios that well. I struggle a little bit playing these decks. I prefer the decks that get to see more cards with things like Faithless Looting and Careful Study. And also with that build, you get to play the really big payoffs like Grizzlebrand and Atraxa. And I think that just is better than going this way with it. Now, there might be a more mid-range deck you could play where you're kind of like Troll of Khazad-dûm type stuff. So you have like an easy way of putting a creature in the graveyard and going. I'm not sure. Maybe there's a different selection of monsters you could have. Maybe it is Chancellor of the Annex. We did lose a game. Yeah, I think we lost a game because we didn't go on turn 1. We wanted to have a little look at our opponent's hand first. And that cost us one of the games. But, like, maybe you're supposed to send it? I don't know. So, like, if we'd have just sent our creature on turn 1 against that Devil player, we might have just won there. I don't know. So, this is really a difficult one for me. I'm not a giant fan of this one. I also think when you're trying to play Unmarked Grave instead of Entomb, you might need more mana as well. That's something else. I think you can definitely improve upon this, and you can run some kind of shell like this. And I also think if Entomb does get banned, then you're going to see a downtick in Reanimator decks, which means Exhume becomes playable again. So you can turn this Persist into Exhume, which then means you can have Unmarked Grave to go and get, you know, these, like, to get an Archon of Cruelty and maybe a Serra's Emissary. Then the rest of these monsters can all be like your Grizzlebrands and Atraxas, so that when you're doing all the other ways of putting your creatures in, you can just bring them back. But the only reason we're not doing that is because Persist doesn't do it, and this was kind of what I wanted to play, because I didn't think we could run Exhume, because I didn't want to give my opponent free monsters. Maybe we should have just run that, just so we get the better testing in to see how our deck functions, but I just figured that we just run to a bunch of Reanimator decks and have a bad time today. So I think this deck will be better than it looked today, post-banning, if that is what gets banned. Another option you can play with this deck is World Gorger Dragon, because that is a non-legendary creature, if I remember rightly. And you can play the World Gorger Dragon combo, where you bring it in with a Animate Dead, and then it goes away, because the Animate Dead goes away, and then it comes back and brings the Animate Dead back. So basically it just loops all your permanents in and out of play. Now if you have a Underground Mortuary, then you can just mill your deck over until you've milled over like an Archon of Cruelty, and then keep going until you've also got like a secondary Reanimate effect on top of your library. And then what you do is you're floating mana in every iteration as well as you do your World Gorger stuff. So then you get your Archon of Cruelty into play instead of your World Gorger Dragon one time. Then draw that card that you left on top, like the Animate Dead or the Dance of the Dead, I think it is the other one. And then you play that on the World Gorger Dragon, then you loop all your permanents again and again and again, and then your Archon of Cruelty drains them out for 3 each time. And that is how that combo works. And I think that becomes a lot more viable with a setup like this, because you don't have to worry about that. But that deck usually has like one World Gorger Dragon and then a bunch of like Grizzlebrand and Attractor type stuff. So I don't think you want to just index fully into that. But I think you can play legendary creatures in this build if you're willing to play Exhume, which I just didn't want to play for this league. But maybe I just should have. I just sucked it up and said, we're going to lose to Reanimator because we're running Exhume sometimes. Maybe that is the correct thing to do, and it probably makes this deck a little bit better. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed a little experiment, sort of seeing what the format might look like, or what some decks can look like post-bannings. I think the two full-on Reanimator decks I've played showcase that the power is still definitely in this deck. Even if you don't have Entomb, I think the big monsters you can get are definitely worth the squeeze, and it's worth playing something like this. Especially if there's going to be less graveyard hate in the format, which makes this deck better. You have to remember that if you go way back in time, I say way back, not that far back, but before Scam was a deck in Legacy, the best performing deck was Black-Red Reanimator. And that's why Scam became a thing, because it preyed upon the Black-Red Reanimator, and then it slowly evolved into Blue-Black Reanimator, and then the rest is history. And it feels like we've been living in the waiting room of getting that deck banned for a long time. And hopefully this time around it will be the final nail in the coffin of Blue-Black Reanimator, and we have a fresh feeling format. And maybe this sort of Reanimator deck becomes better, but I don't think the Persist Unmarked Grave is necessarily where you want to be. I think the legendary creatures are just so much better than these things. Like the Serra Emissary and Archetype, like all these creatures are things that have seen play in Reanimator decks in the past, but they've just been power scaled out by the big scary legends. And I think that's going to continue to be the case. That seems to be how Wizards of the Coast are designing sets. They put these cards into Modern, and all the big scary things you would want to reanimate tend to be legendary, and I don't think that's an accident. Alright, we are done for today. I think this is probably going to be the last one of these videos I've done of like what is the format going to look like later on. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed this series of videos. Let me know what you think. Do you think Entomb is getting banned? Do you think something else is getting banned? What do you want banned? I will be doing a little bit of a segment on an Eternal Durdles video, which might come out before or after this video, I'm not sure. But check out Eternal Durdles and you'll see various people talking about, like content creators and stuff, talking about the ban list and what they think is going to happen and what they would like to see happen. And I'll be on that as well, so check that out for my more detailed thoughts, or check out my Patreon for my article on it. Alright, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths, as well as 3 tiers of support. A low cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month, as well as regular articles, and lastly, the higher tier gives you all of the above, as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.